Carl Jung's most haunting realization wasn't really about insanity. It was about a certain kind of person, someone whose awareness cut so deep that they noticed what others never even registered. At first, it looks like a rare gift, but Jung discovered that for many it became a heavy burden. These were people who could catch the truth before a single word was spoken, a quick shift in someone's eyes, a silence that carried weight, a smile that didn't match the feeling behind it. They felt it all. They weren't just speculating either. Time after time, their perceptions proved accurate, but the clearer their vision became, the more their lives unraveled. Friendships slipped away, ordinary small talk felt unbearable, and careers collapsed. Not because they were broken, but because most people couldn't tolerate being seen so completely. Around 1913, as Jung himself was wrestling with the fallout of his break from Freud, he worked with a woman who made this reality painfully clear. She was intensely inward, highly intuitive, and uncannily accurate in reading people. The moment she entered a room, she could sense who was hiding something, who was carrying grief, and who was quietly resentful. Jung tested her impressions, and almost every time she was right. But her ability didn't bring her peace. It left her isolated, drained, and estranged from the very people she wanted to connect with. In her presence, others felt unmasked, and they pulled away. Jung eventually came to a startling realization. What he was observing in people like his patient was not simple madness. It was not the collapse of a mind into psychosis, though at first glance it could look that way. Rather, he was watching what happens when human awareness grows too sharp, too wide, too intense for the ordinary frameworks of life to contain. To see through appearances so completely, to perceive what others cannot or will not acknowledge, carries a cost that no one else around them can fully grasp. As he studied more of these cases, certain patterns began to appear. Some individuals absorbed the emotions of those around them so deeply that they could no longer tell where their own feelings ended, and another person's began. Their inner life became a mirror, reflecting back the unspoken moods of a room. Others possessed a quiet foresight, able to sense the outcome of a situation long before it actually unfolded. Still, others carried the burdens of the body. Aches, tensions, even illnesses that were not their own but belonged to the people in their orbit. And then there were those who simply drowned under the sheer volume of impressions rushing into them, unable to filter or shield themselves from the flood of sensation. The real danger, Jung noticed, was not in their perception itself, but in what came after. He identified three central risks. First, such people threatened the invisible contracts that hold communities together. Every family, workplace, and society relies on a kind of selective blindness, an unspoken agreement to look away from uncomfortable truths. Those who pierce the veil shatter that illusion, destabilizing the very order others depend on. Second, they often ended up profoundly isolated. Living with perceptions that no one else could validate made them feel as if they were inhabiting a different reality altogether. And third, the boundaries of the self could blur until they no longer knew who they were. Absorbing so much from others, they risked dissolving into the collective, losing any sense of their own center. This is why Jung placed such emphasis on individuation. For him, it was not just a psychological theory, but a matter of survival. Individuation meant learning to remain rooted in oneself while still engaging with the powerful invisible forces that stream through human life. It required separating what was genuinely your own from what you had unconsciously absorbed. It meant having the courage to confront your own flaws, shadows, and contradictions, rather than collapsing under the weight of seeing them everywhere else. And above all, it meant harnessing vision in the service of life, turning insight into wisdom, rather than using it as an excuse to withdraw. Jung knew this struggle from the inside. After his painful break with Freud, he entered a long period of inner crisis in which his own perceptions nearly overwhelmed him. He admitted later that he was teetering on the edge of psychosis, but instead of fleeing from the intensity, he chose to enter into dialogue with it. Through dreams, symbols, and the strange imagery that poured out of his unconscious, he found a way to work with the flood rather than drown in it. That experience transformed him. What had seemed like a curse revealed itself as a doorway. Evidence, he believed, that extreme sensitivity was not merely a personal burden, but a signal of a deeper evolutionary movement. For Jung, it pointed toward a new stage in the development of human consciousness itself. History offered strikingly different portraits of what happens when a person sees more deeply than the world around them. Take Friedrich Nietzsche, for example. His mind cut through the illusions of his age like a razor. He exposed hypocrisies others dared not confront, and he spoke with a clarity that felt almost prophetic. Yet, brilliance alone did not save him. Without a way to ground his vision in purpose or connection, the very intensity of his insight became unbearable. It consumed him, driving him toward collapse rather than liberation. Now consider Meister Eckhart, the German mystic of the 13th century. He too perceived realities hidden from ordinary sight. But where Nietzsche's insight shattered, Eckhart's wisdom healed. He did not simply diagnose the sickness of his time. He offered nourishment for the human spirit. His words became living water for generations who longed for meaning. The difference, as Jung observed, was not in the depth of vision itself, but in what one does with it. Left raw and untamed, perception isolates and destabilizes. Integrated with humility, faith, and purpose, it becomes a gift that uplifts both the seer and those around them. This distinction was not just theory for Jung. In 1913, he worked with a patient who seemed almost fated to be broken by her heightened perception. She felt crushed by the weight of what she saw in the world, unable to separate herself from the flood of impressions and meanings. Many might have concluded she was doomed to the same tragic arc as Nietzsche. Yet over years of work, something remarkable happened. She discovered that she did not need to deny her gift or numb herself to it. Instead, she learned how to carry it. Rather than being strangled by her sensitivity, she began to use it deliberately, in her work, in her relationships, in her service to others. Her insight, once a burden, became a bridge. For Jung, this was the great discovery. Some people are born with perception that runs ahead of its time. Such people often feel cursed, because the world cannot yet understand them. If they fail to integrate this capacity, it can turn inward, leading to isolation, exhaustion, even destruction. But if they succeed, they become what he called pioneers of consciousness, those rare individuals who bring hidden truths into awareness, lighting the way for humanity's growth. So if you've ever felt overwhelmed by the fact that you notice more, feel more, or see patterns others ignore, the story is not that you are broken. The reality is more complicated. You are carrying an ability that demands cultivation. The true danger lies not in the depth of your perception, but in never learning how to live with it wisely.